Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Don't forget to subscribe and check out my other socials for more. Enjoy. The clock struck 6, and a shaft of early morning light pierced through the curtains, falling across the rumpled bedsheets. A figure stirred, eyes fluttering open in confusion. The room was unfamiliar, the scent of cologne lingering in the air. Heart racing, he sat up abruptly, memories of the previous night flooding back. Paul's warm smile, the gentle touch of his hand, the conversations that had stretched into the early hours. Panic set in as reality crashed down around him. "Oh, God, what have I done?" he whispered, voice hoarse with sleep and fear. Scrambling out of bed, he fumbled for his clothes, scattered haphazardly across the floor. His fingers trembled as he buttoned his shirt, mind racing with the implications of what had transpired. He was married, for heaven's sake. What would his wife think? What did this mean for him? As he laced up his shoes, his gaze fell upon a note on the nightstand, Paul's neat handwriting visible even from a distance. He hesitated, torn between the desire to read it and the urgent need to leave. In the end, practicality won out. He had to get to work. Slipping out of the apartment, he checked his watch and cursed under his breath. He'd have to rush to make it home, shower, and change before heading to the office. The streets were quiet, the city still waking up as he hurried along, trying to make sense of the turmoil in his mind. At home, he moved on autopilot, showering quickly and donning his usual work attire, a crisp white shirt and dark slacks. As he knotted his tie, he caught sight of himself in the mirror. He looked the same as always, but something felt fundamentally different. It was as if the person staring back at him was a stranger. The drive to work was a blur, his mind replaying fragments of the night before. Paul's laughter, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. It had felt so right in the moment, but now doubt and guilt gnawed at him. Throughout the day, he went through the motions, responding to emails and attending meetings on autopilot. His colleagues noticed his distraction, but chalked it up to stress or lack of sleep. If only they knew the real reason for his preoccupation. As the workday drew to a close, he found himself reaching for his phone, fingers hovering over his sister's number. Lisa had always been his confidant, the one person he could turn to with anything. But this was different. How could he even begin to explain? Taking a deep breath, he pressed call. "Hey, big brother, what's up?" Lisa's cheerful voice came through the speaker. "Lisa," he began, his voice cracking slightly. I need to talk to you. It's important." There must have been something in his tone because Lisa's demeanor immediately shifted. "Of course. Are you okay? Do you want me to come over?" He hesitated. "Actually, can we meet at that little cafe near your place? The one with the good lattes?" "Sure thing. I can be there in 20 minutes. Are you sure you're all right?" I don't know. I'll explain when I see you." The cafe was quiet when he arrived, just a few patrons scattered at tables, engrossed in books or laptops. He chose a secluded corner booth, ordered a coffee he knew he wouldn't drink, and waited. Lisa arrived moments later, her face etched with concern. She slid into the seat across from him, reaching out to squeeze his hand. "What's going on? You're scaring me a little." He took a shaky breath, struggling to find the words.
"Lisa, I did something last night, something I never thought I'd do."
Her eyes widened, but she remained silent, giving him space to continue.
"I met someone, a man named Paul."
The words tumbled out, gathering speed as he spoke.
"We spent the night together, but that's not all."
Lisa's expression was a mix of surprise and compassion. "Go on," she encouraged gently. "When I was with him, I didn't feel like myself. Or maybe I felt more like myself than I ever have before. I wanted to be a woman, Lisa. I've had these feelings for years, but I've always pushed them down. But last night, with Paul, it all came rushing to the surface." There was a moment of silence as Lisa processed his words. Then, to his surprise, she smiled softly. "Oh, honey, come here." She moved around to his side of the booth, wrapping him in a tight hug. You're not shocked, disgusted?" he asked, his voice muffled against her shoulder. Lisa pulled back, looking him in the eye. "Of course not. You're my sibling and I love you no matter what. I'm just glad you felt you could tell me." Relief washed over him, and he felt tears prickling at the corners of his eyes.
"I don't know what to do, Lisa. I'm married. I have a life. But last night, it felt like I was finally being true to myself. Listen to me," Lisa said, her voice firm but kind. "You don't have to have all the answers right now. This is a big realization, and it's okay to take time to process it. Have you thought about talking to a therapist, someone who specializes in gender identity issues?"
He shook his head.
"I haven't thought much beyond making it through today, to be honest." "That's understandable, but I think it could really help. And in the meantime, know that I'm here for you, okay? Whatever you need." For the first time that day, he felt a glimmer of hope. "Thanks, Lisa. I don't know what I'd do without you."
As they continued to talk, he felt a weight lifting from his shoulders. Lisa listened without judgment as he recounted his evening with Paul, the feelings it had stirred up, and the confusion and fear that followed. "You know," Lisa said thoughtfully, "if you want to explore this side of yourself, you don't have to do it all at once. Maybe start small. Would you like to try on some of my clothes sometime? In private, of course. Just to see how it feels?" The idea sent a thrill through him. I think I'd like that. But what about work? What about Sarah?" The mention of his wife's name sent a pang of guilt through him. Lisa squeezed his hand. "One step at a time, okay? You don't have to make any big decisions right now. Just focus on understanding yourself better." As they left the cafe, Lisa gave him another hug. "Remember, I'm always here if you need to talk. And have you thought about a name? You know, for when you're feeling more feminine?" He hesitated, then smiled shyly. "I've always liked the name Penny." Lisa grinned. "Penny, I like it. It suits you." Over the next few weeks, Penny, as he began to think of himself in private moments, started to explore this newfound aspect of his identity. True to her word, Lisa was there every step of the way, offering support, advice, and a closet full of clothes to experiment with. The first time Penny slipped on a dress in the privacy of Lisa's spare room, it felt like coming home. The soft fabric against his skin, the way it hugged his body, it all felt so right. Lisa had helped with makeup, and when Penny looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself, but in the best possible way. "Oh my God," Penny whispered, turning this way and that, taking in her reflection. "Is that really me?" Lisa beamed from behind her. "That's all you, sis. You look beautiful." Tears welled up in Penny's eyes, but for once they were tears of joy rather than confusion or fear. As the days passed, Penny began to find moments to express her true self. Sometimes it was as simple as wearing a pair of silky pajamas to bed, reveling in the feel of the fabric against her skin. Other times, she would spend an evening at Lisa's, fully dressed and made up, just existing as Penny. But even as she grew more comfortable with this part of herself, the reality of her situation loomed large. There was still Sarah to consider, and the life they had built together. The guilt of her night with Paul still gnawed at her, compounded by the growing realization that she couldn't continue living a lie. One evening, as Penny sat on Lisa's couch, absently smoothing the fabric of her skirt, she voiced the fear that had been growing in her mind. What if Sarah can't accept this? What if I lose everything? Lisa sat down beside her, taking her hand.
"Penny, listen to me. You deserve to be happy. You deserve to live authentically. If Sarah truly loves you, she'll want that for you too, even if it takes her some time to adjust." Penny nodded, trying to draw strength from her sister's words. "And what about Paul? I haven't spoken to him since that night, but I can't stop thinking about him, about how he made me feel." A small smile played on Lisa's lips. "Well, why don't you reach out to him? You don't have to jump into anything, but maybe talking to him could help you sort out your feelings." The idea both thrilled and terrified Penny. What would I even say? "Hi, remember me? The married guy who spent the night with you and then ran out?
Well, surprise, I'm actually a woman, Lisa chuckled. Maybe not quite like that, but be honest with him. Tell him you've been going through some self-discovery and would like to talk. If he's half the man you've described, he'll understand. Taking a deep breath, Penny nodded. Okay, I'll think about it. That night, as Penny lay in bed, she found herself reaching for her phone. Before she could talk herself out of it, she typed out a message to Paul. Hi, Paul, it's me. I know it's been a while, and I'm sorry for how I left things. I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I was wondering if we could meet to talk. There's something important I need to tell you. She hit send before she could second-guess herself, then set the phone aside, her heart racing. To her surprise, a response came through almost immediately. I'm glad to hear from you. I've been worried. Of course we can meet. How about coffee tomorrow afternoon? Penny agreed, and they set a time and place. As she drifted off to sleep, a mix of anxiety and excitement swirled in her chest. The next day, Penny stood in front of her closet, faced with a dilemma she had never anticipated. Should she go as her male self, as Paul knew her, or should she take the plunge and present as Penny? After a long moment of deliberation, she reached for one of the outfits she kept hidden at the back of her closet, a simple blouse and skirt combo that Lisa had helped her pick out. This is who I am, she said to her reflection as she applied a light touch of makeup. If Paul can't accept that, then, well, at least I'll know. The cafe they had agreed to meet at was bustling with afternoon patrons. Penny arrived early, choosing a table near the back where she had a clear view of the entrance. Her hands shook slightly as she sipped her latte, eyes darting to the door every time it opened. When Paul finally walked in, Penny's breath caught in her throat. He looked just as she remembered. Kind eyes, an easy smile, exuding a warmth that seemed to fill the room. For a moment, he looked around in confusion, clearly not spotting who he expected to see. Then his gaze landed on Penny, and his eyes widened in recognition. Penny stood as Paul approached, her heart hammering in her chest. Hi, Paul, she said softly. Paul's expression was a mix of surprise and something else. Admiration, perhaps. Wow, he said, taking in her appearance. You look amazing. Is this what you wanted to talk about? Penny nodded, gesturing for him to sit. This is me. The real me. I'm sorry I ran out on you that morning. I was confused and scared, but being with you that night, it helped me realize some things about myself that I've been suppressing for a long time. Paul listened intently as Penny explained her journey over the past few weeks, how she had come to understand and accept her identity as a woman. To her relief, his expression remained open and understanding throughout. When she finished, Paul reached across the table to take her hand. Thank you for trusting me with this, he said. I had a feeling that night that there was more going on than you were letting on. I'm glad you found the courage to be your true self. Tears pricked at Penny's eyes. You're not put off? Paul shook his head, a soft smile playing on his lips. Not at all. Penny suits you, by the way. It's a beautiful name for a beautiful woman. They talked for hours, the afternoon sun slowly sinking towards the horizon. Paul shared his own coming-out story, the challenges he had faced and overcome. Penny found herself opening up more than she ever had before, sharing hopes and fears she had never dared voice aloud. As their conversation drew to a close, Paul hesitated for a moment before speaking. Penny, I know you're still figuring things out, and I don't want to complicate matters, but I really enjoyed our time together, and I'd love to see you again. Maybe we could go on a proper date sometime. Penny's heart soared at the suggestion, even as a pang of guilt reminded her of Sarah waiting at home. I'd like that, Paul. But I need to be honest with you. I'm still married, and I haven't figured out how to handle that yet. It wouldn't be fair to start anything until I've sorted things out. Paul nodded, understanding. Of course, take all the time you need. I'll be here when you're ready. As they parted ways outside the cafe, Paul leaned in and placed a gentle kiss on Penny's cheek. You're incredible, Penny. Never forget that. Penny walked home in a daze, her mind whirling with the events of the afternoon. For the first time in as long as she could remember, she felt truly seen and accepted for who she was. But the reality of her situation still loomed large. That night, as Sarah slept beside her, Penny made a decision. She couldn't continue living a lie, not to herself and not to the woman she had promised to love and cherish. It would be hard and it might cost her everything, but she had to be true to herself. The next morning, Penny sat Sarah down for the hardest conversation of her life. With trembling hands and a voice that cracked with emotion, she laid bare her truth, her struggles with gender identity, her realization of who she truly was, and her need to live authentically. Sarah listened in stunned silence, tears streaming down her face. When Penny finished, the silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words and shattered expectations. Finally, Sarah spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what to say. This is a lot to take in. Penny nodded, fighting back her own tears. I know, and I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I love you, Sarah. That hasn't changed. But I can't keep pretending to be someone I'm not. Sarah stood, pacing the room as she tried to process everything she had heard. I need some time, she said at last. It's just too much right now. I understand, Penny said softly. Take all the time you need. I'll stay with Lisa for a while, give you some space. As Penny packed a bag, her heart breaking with each item she placed inside, Sarah watched from the doorway. Just as Penny was about to leave, Sarah spoke again. I don't know if I can be what you need me to be, she said, her voice thick with emotion. But I want you to be happy, even if it can't be with me. Penny crossed the room, pulling Sarah into a tight embrace. They clung to each other, both crying now, mourning the end of one chapter and the uncertain beginning of another. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of change for Penny. She moved in with Lisa temporarily, began therapy to help her navigate her transition, and slowly started coming out to friends and colleagues. Some reactions were supportive, others less so, but with each step, Penny felt more and more like herself. Sarah, true to her word, took time to process everything. They met a few times for coffee, awkward at first, but gradually finding a new rhythm to their relationship. While it became clear that their romantic relationship had come to an end, they were both committed to maintaining the friendship that had been at its core. As Penny settled into her new life, she found herself thinking more and more about Paul. True to his word, he had given her the space she needed, checking in occasionally with a supportive text or call. Finally, feeling more confident and settled in her identity, Penny decided it was time to take Paul up on his offer of a date. She called him one evening, butterflies dancing in her stomach as she heard his voice on the other end of the line. Paul, it's Penny. I was wondering, is that offer of a date still open? She could hear the smile in his voice as he replied, For you, Penny? Always. They agreed to meet for dinner that weekend, and Penny spent the intervening days in a state of nervous excitement. Lisa helped her choose an outfit, an elegant purple dress, and gave her a pep talk before she left. You've got this, sis, Lisa said, straightening Penny's necklace. Just be yourself. That's more than enough. The restaurant Paul had chosen was cozy, with soft lighting and the gentle strains of jazz playing in the background. When Penny arrived, Paul was already waiting, looking handsome in a well-fitted suit. He stood as she approached, his face lighting up with a warm smile. Penny, he breathed, taking her hand and pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. You look absolutely stunning. Penny felt a blush creep up her cheeks. Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself. As they settled into their seats, any lingering nerves Penny had felt melted away. Conversation flowed easily between them, punctuated by laughter and lingering glances. Paul listened intently as Penny shared her experiences over the past few months, the challenges, the triumphs, the moments of doubt, and the moments of joy.
I'm so proud of you,
Paul said, reaching across the table to take her hand. "I know it couldn't have been easy, but you've shown such courage." Penny squeezed his hand, feeling a warmth spread through her chest.
"I couldn't have done it without the support of people like you and Lisa. You helped me find the strength to be true to myself." As the evening wore on, Penny found herself not wanting it to end. There was an ease, a rightness to being with Paul that she had never experienced before. When he asked her to dance, she didn't hesitate, allowing him to lead her to a small space near their table. As they swayed to the music, Paul's arms around her waist and her head resting on his shoulder, Penny felt a sense of peace wash over her. For the first time in her life, everything felt right. She was Penny, truly and completely, and she was exactly where she was meant to be. When the song ended, Paul pulled back slightly, his eyes meeting hers. "Penny," he said softly, "I know we're just starting this journey together, but I want you to know I'm all in. Whatever comes next, whatever challenges we face, I want to face them with you."
Tears pricked at Penny's eyes as she smiled up at him. "I want that too," she whispered. As Paul leaned in, Penny met him halfway, their lips coming together in a kiss that felt like coming home. In that moment, all the pain and struggle of the past months faded away, replaced by hope and the promise of a future filled with love and acceptance. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out my other socials if you want more wonderful content, early access, behind the scenes, and more. All links down below.